Good morning, everyone. This is Jim Clark here at the Synchronicity Sanctuary in Central Virginia to share another contemplative focus with you today. And that focus that we want to look at today is In Search of Stillness, the Gateway to Self-Awareness. So what do we mean by this? Obviously you're aware of something, right? You're aware of yourself, but what do we mean when we say self-awareness from a holistic perspective? From a perspective that you gain from years of practicing meditation and a holistic lifestyle. And that is simply that self-awareness is non-dual awareness or witness consciousness. It's a consciousness watching both relative polarities as the same consciousness. It is a non-dual observation of the dual. It's the awareness of both awareness and non-awareness. It is the experience of unified consciousness or wholeness. And what this all means is that both exist simultaneous to each other. If you look at the holistic model of reality, as I have for years, you come to understand that consciousness or God or whatever you want to call the ultimate reality of all and everything created this universe, created the earth, created us as human beings. So if this we have a source that we have come from, then that source cannot be different than who we are. Even though we're playing a game of being other than who we are, ultimately, we still are who we are. We still are source. We still are that creative impulse that created form. And in that creative impulse, we as individuals have come onto the stage for this lifetime to do what we do in our ongoing evolution back towards realizing this in our experience. So it's not about what you believe, it's not about conforming to a belief system so much as it is practicing meditation, which is a balancing technique. And the reason for this is simple. We are born into a dualistic experience as a human being. And in that experience, by default, the negative polarity, the contractive polarity, is dominant, which means that we have little or no awareness of ourself as source, but we have a total immersion in the pretense of who we are not, which is, in my case, Jim Clark, here as a human being in this office right now. And that's how we go through life. And in the beginning of our journey, when this creative impulse began, we are in the process of becoming immersed and identified with ourselves as something other than source or God or whatever you want to call it. And then we get immersed in it, we become convinced that this is who and what we are, and we're totally caught up in the drama of the human drama of living as human beings on earth, irregardless of what time frame we happen to be in. And this goes on and on until we have fulfilled ourselves in the experience of being a human being and not being God. That God is up there and I'm down here and I did something to deserve all of this, and it's a journey. The human story, we all are aware of the human story in one form or another, and how terrible it is and how much suffering there is, and so forth and so on. And yet, we still experience ourselves in a dualistic fashion, huh? And we think that that's wrong. That we're either being punished or for whatever reason we are trapped in a situation that we have no control over. But we do, and that is meditation. It's a balancing technique that human beings discovered thousands of years ago and have been practicing it in various forms in different parts of the world and for all those years. And they've been commenting and writing about their experience. And from all of this human experience of practicing meditation and achieving the state of balance wherein the positive polarity becomes dominant and the negative polarity becomes non-dominant, what opens up in your experience is a greater self-awareness, a self-awareness that includes the truth of who you are, the ultimate truth. And it also, this experience is happening while you're still in a dualistic framework of existence, pretending to be whoever you are. And so it's in the West here, it's kind of like the mask coming off slowly and over time as you practice meditation and your what we call your power, the power of the positive polarity, the non-dualistic state of being, gradually emerges to become palpable, and then you become aware, oh, there is something else to me, you know. And at first it's very vague and it's kind of half theoretical and half experiential, and then but it keeps growing and growing and growing until it's with you all the time. And at some point during this evolutionary process, you become saturated with endorphins because that meditation is bringing you into a very, very positive polarity experience. And that is by its very nature the experience of love, unconditional love. And it's not that you are being loved, it's so much as you are love. You are the love that is all and everything. That was out of the love for itself that consciousness created all this in the first place. It wanted to experience itself so that it could become aware of itself. And the only way to do that was to create a polarized field of experience. And in this polarized field, we began by becoming convinced that we are something other than Source. And then when we fulfill ourselves in that experience, then we start to automatically shift towards an evolutionary process of creating more positive polarity balance within the human experience. And this has been my experience in this lifetime. In my earlier years of life, in fact, for most of my years of my life, I was unaware. I had no idea of any of this. But it gradually came into my life, and I began to meditate because I had the experiences, what we call awakening, which is where, for a moment, you are exposed to the truth of who you are. And believe me, it is so blissful. It's beyond anything that you could have as a human being normally. You know? But that opens you up. You realize then that there is a lot more to you and life than you ever imagined. It's far beyond anything that your senses could create as an experience for yourself. So with that experience, I realized that was the truth. But then the challenge was, how do you stay in this state of being? How do you capture it and keep it consistent? Because in time it starts to fade away, and it fades away because you had that experience and you, oh my God, here we are, and I was so blissful and whatnot, but you have yet to practice meditation, or you're just in the beginning stages of meditating, and you have yet to create enough balance to offset the negative polarity and the immersion of being simply human. And so it's just a process that you have to go through, and in that understanding, then if you have a teacher, and this is usually when a teacher will show up in your life. And then if you're ready for a teacher, you will choose to go to that teacher or be with that teacher because they've journeyed the journey. They've done the work. And that's their diploma. It's not because they know something. It's because they are something. In their experience and in their practice of meditation, they have evolved themselves to the constant experience of holistic awareness. They are no longer living in the darkness of duality. Even though they're in duality, they're not immersed in duality because they see and experience both, and they have access to this, and their state of being is very powerful. And just by being around someone like that, you begin to be entrained to be that way yourself. And this is the value of such teachers or masters or gurus, however, whatever, by any other name. They're simply people who have achieved the evolution of their own self-awareness to that stage, to that point where they are constantly aware. It's their everyday, every moment-to-moment experience. And when you're around someone like that, you're entrained to that experience yourself. And it's a very volatile and dynamic process that happens around in that context. When you're meditating, whether you're with a teacher or you're meditating using a teacher's methods, and you're very true to your practice, it's to say the least, it can be sort of revolutionary within yourself, because as you open up to that awareness and accept it, and hopefully learn how to understand it and how to integrate that experience, you realize that this is the normal experience. This is the normal experience of who we really are. And in that context, it becomes your normal. It's, as I am today, I'm experiencing myself today as I did in that awakening experience to some extent, which says I still have somewhere to go. I'm still evolving, even though I'm where I am now. And that's fine. It's just the way it is. And I'm very happy to have been fortunate enough to had this lifetime and been brought into my teacher's sanctuary where I could practice with him and learn from him and evolve with his help and his awareness and his guidance. Because it's very tricky, because it's a terrain that's unknown, and if you don't know what you're doing in it, and you don't know how to understand your process in this evolutionary momentum that you're creating, it can be cathartic, very cathartic, and depending on your physicality and what's unique to it, the process can be somewhat uncomfortable. It can be uncomfortable emotionally sometimes, as the data about who you are that was previously dominant in your experience is released in relation to the truthful experience of who you are that's evolving and emerging from your meditative practice happens. Then all that dualistic data you have to let go of it and clear it, so that you can establish yourself in the constancy of oneness. And that process is sometimes upheaval, sometimes but it's also very blissful at the same time. So it's kind of like a contradiction. It's a contradiction in terms of how we have learned to perceive reality. We perceived it as either or. I'm either good or I'm bad. I'm either enlightened or I'm not enlightened, and so forth and so on. But the truth is, we're both. We're always both, because both polarities exist within unity consciousness. And as you become more and more enlightened about who you are, you begin to observe both polarities as the same consciousness. And that in that understanding that you have, because you're experiencing it, you're free. You no longer are burdened by the stories that are created in your mind about good and bad, about right and wrong, and so forth and so on. You see how the whole play is created and unfolding, and within yourself and within the people around you. And so, with that understanding and that experience, you have so much to offer both to yourself and to those in your world. So that's the whole point of sharing these contemplations. It's to help stimulate you in your practice, and that maybe to stimulate you to begin to practice, because it's your time to do so. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and end this live video, because it's time for me to move on in my day. And I hope that this video has been of some help, and to help you to begin or sustain your practice of meditation and building your own state of balance and the state of your positive polarity within yourself, to the point where you too can be blissful moment to moment to moment. Thank you so much for watching.